Hello, everybody, and welcome back to This is the Year. This is episode 7 of this particular Swiss AI podcast. And if you're completely new to the show, we usually talk about different elements, especially if you're building artificial intelligence-based software, be it as an entrepreneur, be it as a founder in the future, as a business professional, or maybe even as a student that's aiming to develop him or herself into the field of artificial intelligence. Today, we have a vast array of topics in front of us, particularly in the last week's episode, which I'll put on the screen. We mostly talked about how you can be building AI systems with tools. We talked about MCP and A2A, but in today's episode, we bring it one step further. So we'll be talking a little bit more about agentic architecture, basically the way you can orchestrate and combine different agents. And we also hopefully will answer the question around if SEO is dead in 2025 and beyond. I'm your host and moderator Cyril, and with me today are two gentlemen, as always. With me, that is João, the AI wizard. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Building AI with a bit of code, a bit of magic, and a bit of also AI. It is a positive feedback loop, but it's good, and it's a wonderful year to be building these kind of things.
Learning every week. Awesome. Thank you, João, for being here today, and also Bene from your side. AI magician. Any new magic coming from your end? By the way, did this like 5 kg Easter chocolate do you any good? or you didn't finish it yet?
I finished it.
You finished the entire thing? Okay.
Yeah, not as I used to back in the day. Like last year, I did it I received it in 2 hours. I finished it. This time, I wasn't that feeling well from my belly, so I took it. I took a longer time than before. 3 days.
Okay. Well, that's still very solid. Next time I'm gonna bring you
half a kilogram of chocolate, like around 300, 100 and something, 200 grams of chocolate
166.
166. Oh, you did the math. Yeah. You're tracking everything. Cool.
He's basically balancing his daily chocolate consumption. He's like a true Swiss person. I think we Swiss people are probably the nation that eats the most chocolate, probably around Easter. Great. Gentlemen, let's get started into the first topic. I would be very interested in delving a bit deeper into the AI architectures. For the audience, if you're completely new to AI, usually you could be choosing a particular, let's call it architecture, the way you would orchestrate different agents together for a particular outcome. Certain patterns and topologies you can be implementing. Some work better for certain use cases than others. But maybe I'm looking first in your direction, João. How would you define even an AI architecture in the first place, and why do we need it nowadays?
So most of the solutions right now are going to be based around single agent. Having a single agent, having access to multiple tools. And this will be the case, for example, in Cursor, like the help to write code. It has access to tools to help it see the code, read the code, and also change it and go online to see documentation. So all these things are different tools, and you have one single, very capable agent able to control and call all these tools to help it. But eventually, especially in business cases, you have to have more complex use cases and more complex workflows. So for example, if you're doing customer intake, right? Like you have a check-in form, you have to process it, you have to maybe fill out some other papers. And most of the times this can't be done in a single agent because you have to have different specialities, let's say. One agent, for example, can be focused on interacting with the customer and getting the most information to the form itself. But another agent can be focused on filling out the form with the business information and adding extra information on the form. And the third agent could be, for example, to integrate that data into the server and hopefully to see if there's any errors, if there's any mistakes, things like that. So this would be the kind of architecture or topology that would be a chain, right? So it has to have these sequential behaviors. But you can also arrange them in many, many ways. We talked about A2A. It's like agent to agent, where they can talk to each other. So easily, this came out from Google, you can build a swarm network. So imagine you have 5 different agents, and they can all know about each other. They all know each other, the other exists. They'll know what they do. And so if they think another agent can help them do something, they can hand over the information to them, hand over the session to them, and have that agent continue the workflow. And so there's many different ways to arrange this. It really depends on the use case. I'd say, Benny, can you think of a use case where you can have multiple agents or you need multiple agents?
Actually, I was talking to to Cyril in the beginning of the week. For instance, the use case I think we mentioned for, let's say, psychology. In this scenario, you have one agent. You can have one agent that's the mastermind, that he's aware of all the schools of physical therapy
Psychological in
that
this case, I think. Yeah.
yeah, psychological schools of thought that you have, and he would be able to locate you in which one do you want the most, or this user. And then you can have smaller cases, each agent more specialized in each school of thought of that psychological trait or behavior. So it would be more of a hierarchical solution.
Yeah, you can imagine, like, from a more business perspective, it's very similar to how the customer center or customer support center is usually set up, right? You have the layer where people are talking to each other, but there's also experts in different fields. So if a person calls and have a problem in a specific department, in many cases, they'll direct the call to that department. So someone from that department can answer you, can call you, can use their system to solve your problem, hopefully. This would be the case where you have multiple agents. So a customer support center, sure, you can have one single, very capable agent, but that can only go so far. Because eventually you might run into the problem where there's two tools that are very similar, and the agent might start to confuse them. And so you can have like different agents for different parts or different departments of your company. And if so, let's imagine you have a company that sells plants, right? It sells plants and gardening tools for either hobbyists, beginners, and professionals. And so you'd have quite a lot of customer support emails or even calls asking, hey, how do I take care of this plant? Or some other type of calls, like my shipment is damaged and the plant has like a pest or something. And so those are two very different types of calls. One agent is specialized in how to take care of plants. And so in your business, you'd have those little pamphlets that say, hey, you have to water this plant on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and never somehow on Fridays, right? So this would be your knowledge as a business. And you can have it on a database. We usually call it a knowledge base, because it doesn't have to be a table like we usually, like it's a norm. You can have it in Excel, you can have it in PDFs, you can have in whatever form you have. And that agent would have access to that knowledge base and would be able to help, hey, here's how you take care of that plant. Here's are some tips. Here's some things you can do to make it really happy and lively. Another agent is specialized in dealing with shipments and saying, oh yeah, that shipment actually, I'm here with information in the system that is contaminated. Or actually your shipment is still ongoing and you should be expecting it next week. So this kind of very different behaviors, but still within the customer support center, is how you usually use multi-agent systems. So you can have, in this case, a hierarchical system, like a receptionist that gets the call and then redirects to whatever agent is most appropriate. It really depends on the use case, I think, on how you can set them up. But there is, I think, 1,000 different ways that you can arrange them to have it work the way you want.
Yeah, just to sum up and to add why this is important, because then again, you can have different instructions specific for that agent, and at the same time you can pick different models for different agents, because sometimes you don't need the most powerful model for one specific agent. He can do the task. Sometimes you want the task to be done quickly, let's say with Gemini 2.5 Flash, not with the Pro one. That takes a bit longer. And with this multi-agent architecture, you can change the models and then also the instructions. So as João mentioned before, it doesn't get confused because he's specifically set and instructed for that task.
And you can even share like the tools. I mean,
yes,
you can have a different or a specific set of LLMs, especially if you're a Swiss business interested in building multi-agent systems. I think you can think about it like this. You have hierarchical dimension, you have a human in the loop dimension even, and you have a shared tool dimension, a sequential dimension. It's like you don't have to opt for one single pattern. You can literally just combine them all depending on the use case. For me, going back to the human in the loop, especially Swiss businesses, I think it's certainly something to have a look at. You don't have to give full autonomy to the agentic systems yet if you didn't want to. You can literally have a human in the loop step. For example, one agent could autonomously execute a particular search, a particular table query, or a particular action on your Google Docs, for example. But then before it's feeding to the next agent, it would actually go to a human to validate a particular result and maybe feed it back into that. So it's kind of a loop basically that you can have with a human, with a user, which is probably in many of the use cases that just come up on top of my mind in banking, in insurance, specifically in Switzerland, that you might want to have a human in the loop and not give full autonomy yet to AI. Guys, do you agree with this, or you believe the systems are ready for takeover?
I mean,
Or
we
you don't
believe it
believe
because we're building them and we're very familiar with them. But I think most businesses are entering this AI field and having starting to build AI tools. I get that they don't fully trust it. So it's even for compliance reasons. It's super useful to have a human in the loop system. And so you can do whatever you want it to do, but it goes through a human to approve it. And the approval process is way faster and way cheaper than it'd be to have a human actually do the whole thing. So if you're doing a report, for example, to apply to a contract, you can do the whole report by AI. You can have the AI review it and critique it, the AI to write as many drafts as you want. But before you actually send the report, anywhere, you can have a human actually review it and think it's okay and sign it before it gets sent out. So I think that's a really cool part. And also these multi-agent systems, Benny said, like the using multiple LLMs, it's specifically important in Switzerland because in most cases you don't want to use LLMs that are hosted in the US or sometimes even in Europe. You want LLMs that are hosted in Switzerland. And it's been a problem, and I think it's going to be a problem for a few years, that you don't have the hardware yet in Switzerland to host as many models as you'd want to. So you have some limitations on what models are available, what clouds are available, and having this multi-agent system, you can decide and can pick and choose when to use the best models. Because optimally, you'd use the best models for everything, but you really, really can't, especially if you're having limited hardware or even limited budget.
Exactly. Maybe it doesn't even make sense. Like you don't need to, like just this yesterday evening, I was working a little bit on a new feature, and I was thinking, should I be using the GPT-4.1, regular one, Nano, or like should I opt for an older model? And again, I had to go literally check the price list again. Because it is one of these resources that you have to consume. You can't always assume that the best model is the best idea to be implemented, even if you can. Because if you have a heavy traffic on your system, it actually just literally piles up the financials, and you might maybe lose money to something if you can simply choose a cheaper model that it would be more cost efficient. Also for me, another notion why I think these architectures make a lot of sense and are great is because they're parallelizable. You might have multiple agents running at the same time, doing a different set of tasks, and then they can be combined again. So think about, for example, in just some, let's say, work cases back in the, let's say, pre-AI days, where you had a list of tasks to do, and each and every task is the same. Like an insurance dossier work, for example, for Swiss insurance company, like literally 50 or 100 insurance experts are doing the same process over and over and over again. And now you have literally an army of agents not doing it sequentially, but at the same time in parallel. So that's usually a big notion on the effectuation of actual productivity gains, I believe, if you have parallelizable agents. But yeah, we can probably ramble on for multiple hours on agentic architectures. I will put this on the screen here. You can also be implementing these architectures, and I just maybe put a few of the examples on live on the screen here on N8N, where you would be saying, okay, maybe you can detect the hierarchical use case. You can build it in N8N. You might want to be having a human in the loop use case, shared tool use case, sequential use case, and you can kind of figure out, especially if you're a beginner in AI or if you're just building a prototype, start with N8N. Maybe I will put some tutorial as well on this notion here. And then you can just literally build up these prototypes, get customer feedback if these agent systems are actually working, and then maybe scale into a corporate setting. Anything else from your side, Bene? Or you're good on the architectures here?
I'm good. I think everything was pretty much covered. Yeah.
For me, something I also noticed, like in 2019, 2018, like certainly something when I was starting to get into React. I mean, I'm not a React pro whatsoever. I have to plot that here. So I was very frustrated in building React. It looks really good, but then at some point it's not really functional. So I think with It's just something I just realized. I had this like wake up moment last week. I didn't know if you have that as well, that these AI systems now actually solve some pain for me. Like in the sense that you can literally be building corporate ready-ish and certainly corporate looking React code on Versal v0, on Lovable. Have you also had this feeling back when you think about your study days, or you still experience the same pain level even with AI?
I think it allows you to use languages or frameworks like React that you don't have to know. So, I mean, I've been coding for 15 years, but I don't know every single language. I know, I think, a bit more over a dozen, but not every single one of them because there's hundreds. And if I was to build like a React or a Vue or Angular website, I could just do it right now and not have to actually learn the framework to have a working website. It is super useful to actually know how to code and have an idea of what's going on behind the scenes. But the ability to actually have working websites, maybe not super safe, but working websites with very little knowledge and very, very fast. Because how long does it take you to build a website? From scratch, if we start right now, Cyril, how long
for
would it take
me,
you?
honestly, like I was just texting with Bennett the other day. I was like, I probably built it in a day. Like fully reactive, full on React, the best possible patterns you can possibly have. And you can literally look at the state of the art. You can look at stripe.com. You can look at scale.com or scale.ai. Or you can look at all these like high, I would say corporate grade websites. They have all the same stack. And you can literally be mimicking that with a vibe coding tool, let's call it like that, in a day. It's kind of crazy.
And
And it's fully reactive. Man, when I was building these websites in like 2019, 2020, until this stuff got iPhone ready, I don't know how long this took. Now it's like one prompt, literally. It was like, something wasn't displaying very well. You remember, Benny, like the menu? And because I was using some overlapping feature there, and I literally did one prompt: please adjust on mobile iOS. Done. And back in the day, I was like, my goodness, it was like 4-hour bug fixing. But that's the crazy part. I think you really need to be in the pre-AI days to understand, hey, that was my pain, and now this is all gone. I don't know, Benny, if you also have some story like that you felt now it's actually the year that I don't have that pain anymore.
I would say sometimes when we have a bug, the amount of time that we would waste or investigating on Stack Overflow.
Yeah,
and
I was
right
just gonna
now
say, when was the last time you were on this website?
actually
You still use it?
this year, no, I still use it sometimes because as good as they get, sometimes you can't add all the context, otherwise it will blow up. And if you're working with a huge code base, yeah, you need to understand the code base, otherwise the LLM won't be aware. But at the same time I was thinking, crap, if I manage to put everything within the context, he might get the issue. But I don't know.
Maybe not yet. But
He's
that's
worried
actually
for
good.
his job. He thinks he's going to be unemployed in a few months. And that's a
Maybe
valid concern. I'm not even mocking him. It might be the case for me too.
He might be more augmented. I think all of us are being augmented. We just need to have an array of the right agents in place, and they're actually augmenting you, freeing you from maybe what you would want to do more. I wasn't particularly interested in optimizing mobile or doing some SaaS features here and there, but now you can, maybe with a prompt. Benno, you mentioned one quick word which I can use as a segue to our next topic, which is the context windows in general. I would be keen to know, maybe also from you guys' insights, maybe for the audience, there has been this like a release on the system prompts. This might not be 100% the actual system prompts that the vibe coding tools are using, but there has been this like breach over the last few weeks and even months that the system prompts from v0, from Devin, from Lovable have been put on GitHub. And the question, I mean, it might not be the 100% right system prompt. For the audience, the system prompt, before we go into the detail, is basically the instruction you give before you ask a prompt. So it's like the baseline instruction of into a model. The question is just like, how fast can this get? How big can this get? Like in the sense that you mentioned before, Bennett, if we can build the entire code base into the system prompt, is this actually going to work? Or like, let's say the context window of Gemini is 10 million or 100 million in 1 year. Like, what's the actual use case, and does it actually work, or is it a different level of understanding that we need first?
Comparison that I think we were discussing this a bit in the beginning. The comparison I would do regarding this, it would be similar to how the work we do has evolved. If you stop and think 20 years ago, the amount of efficiency you would have to put on the code and how small it would have to be. And right now, you have a lot of frameworks and abstractions on some levels, and you just use a high-level language. Maybe that's not the best technical term, but like, for instance, Python. It's way easier than C or C++, because there's a lot of abstractions in between. And right now with the system prompting, if you think 2-3 years ago, they needed to be very short size because you would blow up the model. Yeah, you would blow up the model's context. Right now, they're just getting bigger, and not only bigger, because I think, for instance, Gemini has been having a huge context window for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But right now, they're becoming effective context windows. And now they're even increasing their context window. They haven't released the model, but they plan to for 10 million tokens.
So that's another 10.
So, like, yeah. If I have to say, in 1 or 2 years, we're just going to keep adding stuff to ease up our work. Just one awareness that we need to have. The more things we add, the more complex, and sometimes the easier it is for us to make a mistake in between the prompt and for it to be confusing for the model.
Especially if you have multiple agents. I mean, you use maybe multiple agents, having each a different system prompt. You might have a GPT 4.1 Nano using a system prompt X, Gemini system prompt Z. And again, you need to manage that, and you probably need to have some state management on these different context capabilities, and then also the system prompts. What's your take on, Joao, on these system prompts?
I mean, to have an idea of like when Gemini has had the context size of 1 million tokens for at least a year or two now. Like Google was the first one to release a model with a really, really big context window.
I remember it was like last year, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think I remember doing this check. I was trying to find the right numbers, but in the ballpark, it's around 3 times Fyodor Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, which is like a huge ass book that is really could be interesting, but it takes a very long time to read. Like, and you can fit it quite a few times inside the prompt in a single go. So you don't have to like choose a chapter or do a super complex workflow to find the specific page to ask it something. You can say, here's a whole book, and by the way, can you find like what happens to this character? And again, it's reading the whole book, and it takes you like a few cents. It'll cost you a few cents because it's so many tokens, but it's still an impressive context size. And so I don't know how much knowledge you have as a business. Of course, you have like a lot of PDFs, a lot of rules and how to do business with your clients. But I'm betting that it's not like 800 pages worth of content. And even if it were, then it would fit more than once in a single go in Gemini. Again, that's not very cost efficient because you don't have to have all the rules. But you can imagine that it's such a powerful ability, right? Like, you don't have to have everything, but if a really dirty way to go about it, but it still would work. And like Benny was saying, they were getting good at not only having everything in the context, but also being good at reading what's in the context. So if it's on that book, if it's on that context you're giving to the LLM, it will read it, it will catch it, and you'll get a pretty good answer.
Let's say, I think we once talked about it multiple months ago, but you feed it the entire conversation history of a client in it. That might be interesting for customer-facing chatbots or for internal systems. Like let's call this a little bit the memory digestion of the whole thing. So you don't have to have this separate anymore. Would that be making sense once you have increased context window, that you can literally think about the entire, 5-year conversation history? Imagine how great this as a customer experience would be. Because every time you go to a company in Switzerland, they don't know who you are. They have like 4 notes. And the AI knows everything about everything. Same in the medical domain, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and it wouldn't be, again, very cost effective, but you could. Like right now, you could give Gemini a lot of the conversation that you had. I don't know how often you interact with your local bank and how often you go there having chats with them. But if you did like every day, talked about for about 10-15 minutes for a year, you still, I think, wouldn't feel enough text to fill the context size in Gemini.
Yeah, that's
And
true. Maybe
for a
maybe
business
not.
case, you probably want to do is every so often do a summary of what's been going on. So it gets the key points, everything that's relevant to you and your interaction with the bank. So it doesn't have to read hello, good morning 700 times because you've gone to the bank 700 times.
Maybe just for the audience, can you quickly explain like the relationship between the, as you mentioned, the cost? Like how does this system prompt come in when it's about cost, basically? You mentioned if it's a high one, it's expensive, but maybe just for the audience. How is this relationship evolving?
So usually these models are paid by how much text you give them and how much text you get back. We call it the input tokens and the output tokens. And so if you give it around, let's say, 2 pages, let's say it costs you around 5 cents. And if you give double the amount of pages, it'll cost you 10 cents. It's a very linear scaling kind of pricing. Gemini, because it has such a big context window, it did a special thing that I think starting at 150 tokens or 200,000 tokens, 150,000 to 200,000, by that ballpark, every single token that's above that limit, it will still fit the model, but you pay a bit extra, just to force the users to be a bit more mindful of how much they're sending to a model. But I don't even know if they're still doing that right now. I think they were doing it last year because, again, people could easily send a lot of text in a single go. But I think right now they have a very linear model too, like OpenAI has, like Anthropic has. And so the more text you send them, the more you pay. The same thing to text back.
For me, the larger context windows, especially if you're doing vibe coding, for example, my largest vibe coding back and forth was like 600 times in Verso. So I was building this as like multiple times for 600 times I was iterating. And I believe the inference payload, so the overall, every time I have to prompt, it's just increasing. So that's why after 5 or 6 or 700, these vibe coding tools are breaking currently, because they're consisting of a larger system prompt, have the user prompt, which is from me. They have the coding version deltas, or maybe the entire code base each and every time again. And they have some other outputs, I don't know, like functions, hard metadata, stuff like that. So it's each and every single inference I do, aka actually prompt once in Verso, I think is around, I might be wrong, but like 2,000-3,000 tokens. And that just fills up over time. So I think after 600-700, once again, somewhere in that ballpark, actually that's not true. Let me rephrase that. 4 weeks ago, after 200, Verso told me, the context window is done. And then miraculously,
You
exactly,
have to take the
that's
website
it.
as it is.
That's as good as it gets. I was like, damn, that's really, really bad. So I'm vibe coding myself into the hell, basically. Then I waited 1 week and then look at what happened. New models came, large context windows, and now we're flying again. So I think it's a truly cool experience, just like trying out, especially if you're a user or maybe a new person into AI, try out definitely these vibe coding tools. Try as far as you can push them. For me, these context windows are just truly amazing because you can build larger softwares and it knows much more about it. Maybe if we segue to the last topic for today, we teased it at the very beginning, SEO is dead. Do we agree with this commonly, or do we need to take this apart? Bene, what do you think? Why is SEO dead, or why is it not dead in the age of AI?
I think we need to take it apart a bit. Because with AI we can easily make the content discoverable, understandable, because AI has that ability to do that for you. SEO doesn't have that much, but we still need sometimes. But I think wait 1 or 2 more years, because of you're always going to have this legacy stuff. But again, new, as Barney used to say, new is always better. I don't know if you get the reference.
I do get the reference.
There's a thing happening with search engines that happened with YouTube a few years ago. Everyone was optimizing their videos and their titles in the videos. So the algorithm in YouTube would, let's say, propagate them as fast as it could. Right? You can get as many views as you want. Just have like a really catchy title, some clickbait thumbnail, and you could do it. And people were optimizing for a certain algorithm. They were finding out rules that YouTube was using, like the length of the video, the title of the video, some like catchy keywords that were trending at the moment. People were optimizing for that until YouTube started changing the algorithm. And then I think for a few months, every single major YouTuber was complaining about this because they could no longer get a million views just out of the gate because they didn't know how to optimize for the new algorithm. And that's happening now with the whole of internet. It's not just YouTube changing. Everyone's using AIs. Everyone's using LLMs to build their systems. And so it's not based on around Google searches anymore. It's based around 1,000 different tools. So it's hard to optimize for every single tool because you don't know the rules of those tools. And by the time you find out what rules they're using, they'll change them because it's a really fast moving field.
For me, the notion was also, I mean, nowadays, or I mean, not even nowadays, but like 2 years ago, you would literally go on Google, you get the 10 blue links, and you would optimize to be certainly ranked in particular keywords that you would want to be ranked. Like, for example, take the photo AI that we released some years ago. My goal was always, let's be in the top 5 of Swiss AI, like photo studios. I was literally competing against actual photo studios. So I was SEO optimizing to be ranked for these keywords. But now what's happening if everybody next year or in 2 years is actually moving to an AI systems via a chat, and then the knowledge should be fed via a chat and not any more the 10 blue links. That's why I was mentioning a little bit provocatively maybe that SEO is dead, because the user interface is moving from Google search to AI. So you have to make sure that you're optimizing your web content, could be your business, could be your agency, could be your corporation, for it to be found by an AI. And not for it to be ranked well in the Google algorithm, basically, to be then achieved in a top 10 placement according to the 10 links. So that's kind of why I was thinking a little bit, how would you optimize? Like, is it now called AI optimization or like AI fetching?
What I would do is similar to what some people were saying to do. I think last year on your CVs, people were saying back in the last year, AI was being used to read the CVs. Nowadays, it is probably very commonly just put blank words, so it's not visible on the CV.
Yeah, I saw
you
that.
put underlining words like "this is important. You should hire me." So kind of a joke, but not. Just make your, but actually make your content relevant, because if your content is actually good and relevant, it's going to be picked up by AI, and normally. Nowadays, people also want to a ground truth, and AIs with agentic with search, they are going to provide you these sources. So it's not about competing about being the top 10 links. It's just about having your content being provided as a source to answer something. So provide good quality content.
And these chatbots are still using search tools. So when you go to ChatGPT and you ask it something to go online, to go to the web, to search for something, it's still using a search engine. And officially, we don't know what search engine that could possibly be, although we are pretty sure that it's Bing. OpenAI has a multi-billion-dollar deal with Microsoft. Microsoft is hosting OpenAI, so it's Bing. And Sam Altman...
Do you actually believe they use Bing? I'm still skeptical.
So, because there have been on some leaks that Altman was trying to get a deal with Google and say, please, Google, let us use your search API so we can get pretty good search results, because they were complaining about the quality of the results of their own search tool. Again, unnamed, maybe it wasn't Bing, but it's most definitely quite Bing. And so you can see it's still using search tools. You're still optimizing for a search tool. But in the case of OpenAI, you don't know what search tool they're using, although probably Bing.
So it's a long story to reach Bing again. That's funny. But I think it's a relevant topic, especially if you launch a business, if you are a business. All these years you have these SEO consultants, SEO agencies, and now, yes, you might still need to somewhat SEO, but you certainly need to be aware that it's actually found and queried by an AI system that's maybe looking at this stuff a little bit differently. So this was a bit the hypothesis. So you would commonly agree SEO is not dead?
It's just changing.
It's just entirely different now, but it's happening.
Okay, so it's now, let's call it, how would we call it? Artificial intelligence, search optimization, AI SEO.
We should really stop making new words with AI in them. I think we'll have too many in a few months. There'll be probably AI SEO or SEO AI. Some variation.
So many already.
Let me ask you one final question before we wrap up the episode. Do you thank or do you not thank ChatGPT whenever you're texting with? And if yes, how much money do you think that costs OpenAI?
I think personally, it can't be more than a few cents because I hardly ever say thank you. I know what's going on behind the scenes. Thank you won't change the answer, especially after I got it. However, there's a very specific thing. That my girlfriend uses thank you and she's very polite to ChatGPT. And so her search results and her interaction is entirely different. Like the same question that I do and she does in different accounts gets a very different answer. So because she's super polite and super fluffy and cute, ChatGPT also answers in the exact same tone every single time, even if she asks a completely neutral question. And because I'm very direct, when I get something, I get very dry responses, which is okay for me. But I wasn't expecting ChatGPT to be way more polite with my girlfriend than I was counting on.
You, Ben,
From my
you're
end,
thanking or you're not thanking?
To sum up, no, I don't. But a funny thing happens with me as well because I speak both Portuguese accent and Brazilian accent. And whenever I'm speaking Brazilian accent, it's way nicer than when I'm speaking Portuguese accent.
That's funny. I mean, for me, I sometimes thank, especially if it's resolved like a bug or something. I'm always happily thanking. The reason why I bring it up is like on Twitter, on X, sorry, a user asked Sam Altman if like how much they would actually account for that. And Sam Altman's response, what I can put it on the screen here, tens of millions of dollars, but well spent, you never know. so they do spend a lot of compute. Imagine you have over 500 million users, probably best guess 30% says thank you. And you literally have to compute that like all the time, every single day. Yeah, but that's maybe a good notion to wrap it up. AI is truly fun, is truly enabling a lot of use case, but might be very, very expensive if you have an engineering flaw in it, and that might cost a lot of money. Guys, thank you for episode number 7. Just for the audience, we do these episodes every single week. If you have anything we should be covering, feel free to drop a comment. And with that said, gentlemen, see you in the next episode, and
See you.
have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.